Bible says the message of the cross is
foolishness.
Foolishness.
Foolishness. Foolishness.
Foolishness to those that are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. Guys, welcome to the Foolishness podcast. This is Brian Sumner. This is episode 42. And you know, I had a friend of mine, Ned Schaut, who flew out here. He did an interview with me in a podcast for his show, the Rebel and Create podcast. And his focus was on being a dad, being a father, and parenting. And so as someone who's 40 with a wife, will have been married for 20 years this December, with a 19-year-old, 12-year-old, and 9-year-old, we unpacked for about an hour or so, and I threw in what wisdom I had. He unpacked some questions he had, and so I'm encouraging you to jump into this episode here. It's available on his format, but also right here. It's on Fatherhood. Jump in, and God bless you. Thanks for tuning in, for sharing, for liking, for subscribing. Here we go.
Welcome to another episode of Fatherhood Field Notes. I'm sitting here in Brian Sumner's house, super stoked to hang out and talk about fatherhood with this guy, because I know he's got a wealth of knowledge around life. And so, man, thanks for having me in your house.
Of course, it's kind of cool. I'm not the one interviewing someone. I'm being interviewed, so it's cool.
A little less pressure.
I don't know where we're gonna go. So the Lord's good though. So yeah.
Man. Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I mean, you don't need a big introduction. Mm-hmm. You are skateboarder, lover of Jesus, and an extreme man. And
I laugh a lot too.
And you laugh a lot, and you're always smiling. That's good. That's good. So yeah, I wanted to come and I wanted to talk to you about fatherhood. Yep. I mean, Google your name, and you can have as many skate videos as you want, or as many videos talking, specifically about Jesus Christ. And so I wanted to go, okay, if we know Brian Sumner, we know a lot of this stuff. So I want to dig into the fatherhood piece. Yep. Okay, because a lot of us skateboarders are now dads. Yeah. And navigating that is. Yeah, there's no manual for it.
It's hectic.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is.
So that's what we'll get into. So just a couple questions just to give people a little bit more understanding. So how old are you now?
I am 40 as of June 2nd.
Happy birthday, man.
Yep.
And how many kids do you have? I
have 3. I have a 19-year-old in the room behind us, and my daughter Eden, who's 12, my son Jude, who's 9. And it's amazing. It's crazy. It's amazing though.
Yeah. And how many years have you been married?
We will be, I think we always say 19 or 20, coming up this December. So, we were married, separated, fully divorced, remarried. And that's why there's even a gap between the 19-year-old and the 12 and the 9. So it's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. And now, what do you do every day now? So it's like you have this skateboard career, you have this, pastor career. What is it that you do on a kind of your daily life to provide for your family?
If you said to the Lord, who is Brian, he'd say, it's definitely the office of an evangelist. And by that, I mean, since I came to faith, it's just, why isn't anyone telling everyone about Jesus? Why didn't I know this? It's go, 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 go. And so when I came to faith and God began to restore our marriage, I had savings from skating. I kind of rode it out for 2 or 3 years, wanted to reach as many people as I could in the skate industry. I was doing some Bible school and going to church, serving as a deacon. It was just like I was all in, like I was with skating. That was my faith. And as that transitioned, it literally got to a place of, can I go around the world and focus 3 weeks' time on this and that for a trick or two or a video? Yes, you're in a van with a bunch of guys that are partying and raging, and I get that Jesus hung out with all those people, and I'm for all those people. I want to reach everyone. But I had a marriage to help restore. God was working on. And my wife, after we got remarried, wanted more kids. So it really was God focusing on that. And then it was me just saying, Lord, what do you want to do? And I considered, I'll start a business. I'll go work at some of these big sports brands. I know people. I'm diligent. A pro athlete can surely, you could teach me to do a trade and I'm going to master it in a year or two. And it just seemed like God kept saying, no, there's this door open and that door. You're speaking at a youth group, a camp, a men's ministry. I'm like, okay, Lord. I mean, I have 4 sermons written on the table right now. I'm going to Canada tomorrow to preach at a big conference. So basically my day is wake up and who's messaged me to maybe do a podcast? where am I going to speak at a school, who am I meeting with, their marriage is upside down, or am I downtime and doing stuff with my kids? And it's literally, it's hard to understand, but we just joke talking about it. It's like I'm an evangelist, and churches don't really have staff evangelists.
Yeah.
So you're just always going.
So you're always going, and there's not necessarily a set schedule or plan. And how's your family with that?
They're fine, because literally I remember coming to faith, and whether it was someone said it or not, just realizing, hey, I'm not going to be gone so much that my children resent God because their dad's not there. You know.
So you balance that out. So you think about that.
You have to. I mean, I remember a good friend of mine, Matt Rainwater, you know, he was a drummer in a band, went to our old church, and I forget who he was quoting, but he just said, you know, someone had told him, you can be a lot of things, but only you can be their dad. And so to me, it was like, I'm not that guy, though. I'm a homebody. I mean, listen, my wife and I have been away from our kids for one night. Like, we literally, after 12 years, said, hey, we're going to Palm Springs. We left the kids. We went, and after one night, we're like, we don't want to stay 2 more days. Let's just go home. I'm a homebody. Here's our living room. We're sitting in the kitchen recording this. I'll go away 4 days max without my family, and if I'm going longer, I'll bring someone.
So when you travel, you're taking your family with you, or a kid with you?
A kid, yeah. I mean, I've gone to Australia numerous times, England. Normally, I'll take my oldest. My daughter tomorrow is 12. This will be a first trip with me. The crazy thing, and we can get into this in a minute, it'll probably prick your thoughts, but my wife doesn't fly because since we miscarried our fourth, her ears went crazy. And if she goes on high altitude, her ears go to pop. So imagine being an evangelist that literally goes around the world. Your wife stays home. Her mom lives 6 houses down on the other side of the street. I know people are listening right now just laughing at my accent. Guys, I'm from Liverpool. Get over it. Living in America, though, now. But yeah, literally, it's like... it's crazy. Like
but that gives you some serious one-on-one time with your kids.
Oh, it's
so you and your son are probably pretty tight.
Well, he's 19, so you don't have any 19-year-olds yet, right?
No, 13's my oldest. I'm just getting in the teen game.
When you get to 16 to 19, no, but I'll say this just even up front. The hard thing about being a dad with teenagers is their uncles are bro, the youth pastors are bro, but you're the one saying, pick up the dog poop, don't talk to your mom like that. Don't leave the toilet seat up. So, yes, close enough where I still remember the things my dad challenged me with as a kid that I know are true. So close in that sense. But then, of course, I mean, we'll skate, we'll surf. I mean, his girlfriend's always over here. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. All right, so I got some specific questions I want to get into, just knowing your story some. But before I do that, as you've been a dad, what has been the best resource to you? So whether it's, you know, when you first had a kid or you know, elementary, toddler, teens, what has been some of the best resources to you?
Well, I knew coming in, it's like anything. One of the life lessons is, you know, you start skating and you get better. You become an amateur, you get better. You become professional, you get better. So there's no like right way, there's your way. So even when we had kids, obviously the fact that we got that. You know, it's just practical. Like you doing podcasting, it's only going to be better. I mean, we get better. What is it, 10,000 hours? That's when you begin to become a crafter and a master at it. For me, it was more when I came to faith. I feel like we were good parents. I mean, like my wife's parents, her mom and dad separated when they were young, but they stayed best friends. In fact, you know, I don't know that they're all believers, but the mom remarried, and when the dad she was divorced from got sick a bit, he moved back in with them. Dang. And they lived, like I said, down the street. And part of their joke is, I almost wish we were married again so I could divorce you again. You know, when they're joking. But I guess I'm saying that to say her parents, awesome, consistent, loving. My parents, awesome, consistent, loving, and married till my mother passed a few years ago. And so for us, we went in like, yeah, we're going to do this well. Obviously getting separated, but then having our youngest at the time, you know, obviously Dakota, I just knew this was going to be a journey. And it was really, as I was beginning to read the Bible, hearing men like Ravi Zacharias, hearing guys like John Piper, Vodi Bakum, it was men talking about a man's role that really encouraged me the most. I'm for all these books. I want these books. Yeah. I want a book from yourself to hear, man, what's his journey? Or, you know, my marriage book sitting on the table right there.
Yeah, I'm excited to look at this.
Here's our battles and what we went through. But there's nothing greater than the Word of God. But that has to be then lived out. So
So you're saying, so resource to you has been good example through your own parents.
Yep.
Even through the messiness of life, because your wife, like you said, her parents were divorced, but through that messiness, they still found common ground, right? Which is super hard to do in our culture.
The most important thing
is like we disagree on so much stuff, but we can still be friends. We can still break bread together. Okay, so this podcast is Fatherhood Field Notes.
Yeah.
So it's men who've had 20 years of experience or whatever their story is, and opening up their soul a little bit to go, man, here's some stuff that I've learned, some vulnerable stuff that, we just may not talk about. And the hope is that other men are listening going, oh, okay, so I'm learning from that. So that's the Fatherhood Field Notes. And then the core of this is Rebel and Create. And that was born into me in 2015 to rebel against the status quo of what the church might have told me, the world might have told me, I might tell myself as what a man is supposed to be, what a father is supposed to be.
Yeah.
And out of that, don't just be rebellious for the sake of being rebellious.
Yeah.
But what are you going to create out of the rubble? Like you tore it down, so now what?
Yeah. What's to come?
Yep. And so what is something that you either lifelong journey or currently are rebelling against, and what do you hope to create out of that?
I guess for me, when we talked a little bit earlier about the idea is my rebelling against anything is just the world system. And whether you say I'm a conspiracy guy, whether it's, talking about it in John, like the love of the world and the flesh and the pride of life, whether it's that in Genesis when Eve ate of the fruit, there was 3 things there that drew her. I mean, the way it looked, the way it tasted, the way it felt, having her own wisdom, the same 3 things that Jesus is tempted with in Matthew 4.
Yep.
The same things we're tempted with. So coming to faith as a guy from England, growing up on the Beatles, Pink Floyd, music, not that I had this pornography addiction, but just how many women have you seen naked, how much men, all of us listening, have you been exposed to? You've seen every shape, color, whatever. This whole idea, and then within marriage, do I have crushes on people in Hollywood? Does my wife have crushes on people? I mean, where are we with that? This whole idea of just the world is, and I'll put it straight, if the Bible is the only truth, then really the greatest evangelist today for the bad news is Satan. And he's ministering to this world, men to you, me about my identity, the Homer Simpsons and the goofiness of who a dad is, and the men and going and partying and days in Vegas, and even for women. So my rebellion was more out of that evangelistic heart of, okay, wow, I am seeing men moved out of their house, losing everything, depressed, divorced, suicidal, because they bought the lie of the world. I know it's our sin nature. I know it's the flesh and it's Satan and the rest of it. But my rebellion is more, I don't want the gray areas. Like, believe me, my wife and I fell in love to certain songs that I love, but if it came down to it, I don't need to hear them. I'm not being religious. I'm just saying my own rebellion is like, I don't need it. My wife was someone that was straight edge growing up. I'm so compulsive, so we don't drink. You're allowed to drink biblically, but my rebellion is like, if John Piper says he can only chew a pack of gum without him devouring the whole thing, I'm that way as well. I don't need alcohol sitting in the fridge, because for me, when I have a bad time, when I have a bad moment, is that going to be where I fall into? Right. I'm saying that to say the world is pitching so much stuff to us that my rebellion is more, no, Lord, I'm not gaining holiness by acting this way, but I just want less of whatever's being sold to me.
So what do you hope to create out of that?
Just a deeper relationship with God. And guys, I'll tell you, if you just said, Brian, go right off the air, where are you going? My message is simple. It's Jesus showed up, said, follow me, I'll make you fishers of men. He showed us how to do that for 3.5 years. He was a rabbi. He died and resurrected, said, wait for me here. And he showed up, and what was his message? The exact same one. All authority in heaven and earth has been given to me. All right, Jesus, what do you want us to do? There we are on the bank, all the men listening. I want you to go. The problem with this idea of rebelling with the world in the right sense is this. If I'm rebelling against it, what am I rebelling to? Back to your point, what am I creating? It's the Great Commission. I haven't got time for drugs when I'm living the Great Commission. I haven't got time for an affair. You haven't got time for an affair if you're down here podcasting. If suddenly you're meant to be here at 5 and you're not showing up, and I'm like, where have you been an hour? You don't know. You're distracted by something else. That's the world, that's your flesh, the rest. So I'm saying that to say, what I'm creating is what God's already created. It's Ephesians 2:10, where his workmanship, we're given a call. I mean, he doesn't address specific things. Paul goes deeper in certain things to the church, but Jesus is simply like, fish. Let's fish. If you wake up each day, I mean, this podcast, there you go, cod, fish and chips. This podcast is about fishing, reaching people, encouraging our breath
fatherhood.
every day. Mm-hmm. Fatherhood. And that is evangelism. Because if you rip Satan didn't even show up until they were married. He didn't even get consent until the two became one. And God was beginning to secure two together. So think about that.
That's dope.
What is the first thing that God says is not good before the sin? That man is alone.
Alone, yeah.
So the rebellion against the world is that it just answers. Listen.
So, I mean, as you're saying it, I mean, it's not good for man to be alone. Everything that you're saying, the world stuff, kind of the lies, it's very much you. It's just going like, make you as dope as you could be.
Even in your marriage, and you have this car, this wife, this whatever.
Which some of that stuff can be fine.
It's not bad. Music's not bad.
But if it replaces that oneness, if it doesn't make you closer to people, brings you farther away, then it's a distraction.
Well, I mean, looking around our house, you have a laptop here, old phone here, we got a TV here. These things program you. They're programs.
Yeah.
Television is speaking of vision. The Bible says people perish for lack of vision. And so here I am getting into just thoughts, but what I'm saying is I grew up rolling up my sleeves, idolizing Bruce Lee. I grew up looking at Bob Marley posters, realizing there was a pot plant on there and not thinking about it. I grew up listening to the Beatles and, that's what Lucy in the Sky are Diamonds? And I'm saying, whether people realize it or not, if the Bible is the only truth, everything else that we hear comes from the father of lies. So the idea that you could get divorced does not come from God. I don't mean people. I mean, but where does the idea come from? The father of lies. So everything we buy that isn't right out the pages of Scripture, I'm not saying a painting or a beautiful song or a poem. I mean, every good and perfect thing comes from the Lord. We are creators in that sense. We use what God's given. But whatever I'm buying into or residing in, and that could just be me being extreme, but Paul seemed to want to crucify his flesh more, not to be righteous, but because he was made righteous. I just think that we buy this lie in the Christian bubble that like one foot's here, one foot's there. I'm like, no, guys, listen. I sit with people, men who lose it all. I mean, there's an epidemic in Australia of men who end up taking their lives because of the way the court system files it. They get so screwed, and the wife gets everything. She's in bed with someone else, the kids. I mean, some of you listening might be there, but I'm saying that to say we've just got to be the pioneers. We've got to be at the forefront, willing to die to self for the sake of our bride. I mean, even the book I wrote, the whole idea, and I'd never really realized this, I'm coming to faith, God restoring our marriage, and I realized, wait a minute, what is the picture of the Bible? It's the picture of marriage.
I think that's the greatest reflection of God is marriage.
It begins with a marriage in Genesis. It ends with one in Revelation. It's about a king called Jesus who slayed a dragon called Satan to redeem his bride. It doesn't mean everyone has to be married. Paul didn't have that gift, apparently. Whether he had a wife prior or not, we don't know. But my marriage represents Christ dying for his bride, the church. And when you tell a man this, and when you tell a woman, my wife just left a minute ago. Out of everyone in the world that can pray for me, there's no one greater than who? That woman. When I drive her crazy, when she drives me crazy, you're not watching the Oprah show hearing about praying wives. You're not seeing the things on the leading tabloids or the newsstands about how to be a godly woman. When you as a man get the vision, I'm the covering, I'm the die for this woman, despite all your issues. Christianity is about dying to self, by the way. That's what marriage is. It's death by marriage. That's what we need. And when that woman gets, man, I came out from his rib, I go back there, I'm one with this man, we're the object of beauty, then you begin to say, we're fighting because God's at work, one of us is being a tool, we got to get through this.
Because we'll both become more of the image of what we're supposed to be on the other side. If we allow...
Well, that's what it is.
Exactly.
I mean, he had to go to the cross, yes, for the salvation of the world, but we have our own crosses to carry.
Yeah.
Less of me, more of him. I must decrease, he must increase. It's not the white picket fence, the Disney ending. It's war in that sense, and here's your idea of rebelling against. I'm literally dying to self daily.
It's a war every day.
Not for my wife, not for my kids, not for me, for Christ, which is better than. And I say this a lot when we're doing marriage stuff. If I love my wife the way I love her, it's not good. I've got to love her the way Christ loved the church. And that is hard. And back to your point about fatherhood, having a son who's now 19, there's many times, because I travel, I'll love him as best I can. I'll love my daughter, I'll love my son. I'll get on a flight. The fact that tomorrow is the first time my daughter's going to be away from my wife and my youngest, they're going to reflect and be like, man, when was the last time we fought? When was the last time I said this? I wish I didn't. When was the last... Listen, guys, you were going to blow it. You were going to say stupid stuff. If I was sitting there with you, you'd be like, wasn't that stupid of me to say? And I'd be like, yes, it was. But guys, we have to keep pressing in, using the grace and mercy. That's why it's there every day. And you've got to just keep making this story new.
Yeah.
I mean, my issue's always been anger, because coming from England, it's rowdy, it's crazy. So I have to watch those verses in the Bible to talk about, if I'm too harsh with my kids, how's it going to make them rebel? Because as men, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Your wife's going to treat you like no other man would. They'd have been punched in the face or kicked out your house.
Yeah.
Your kids are in rebellion against you. Your wife's in rebellion against you. You're in rebellion against God in the flesh. That's the crazy chaos of this whole bubble, but that's what's beautiful.
Yeah, man, it's a lot. I love it. All right, so I'm going to ask a couple questions, and I know we'll just keep going down this path.
Go wherever,
So you're born in England, and at 15 years old, you moved to the United States.
Yeah.
So how's your relationship with your own dad?
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Yeah, it's funny because I think about this more lately. Like my dad's dad, because he was born like later on in his life. He was close enough with him where they lived in the same house, but he almost told me, like, my dad never really even talked to me that much or did that much.
Because his dad was older.
Just older, yeah. So he was just used to where he paid attention to his older brother. But that's almost weird. I can't imagine what that might have done with him. But my dad was the kind of guy that he was amazing, he had that older brother, he had a sister.
But how was it that could you imagine, your kid's 19 and he's in the other room right now.
Well,
what if he moved 4 years ago?
Well, that's the point. So growing up, he took me on bike rides, took me to catch frogs, took me to Wales, took me everywhere. My mum went along. They were always together. He worked the 9 to 5 hard. She worked hard. They definitely give me this drive.
And were you an only child?
No, I had 2 older sisters. So
okay.
I was probably, God didn't say I was an accident, but I was definitely an accident to them.
Yeah.
For sure. I just showed up and my dad's like, well, I got my son now. Maybe that's why he made the effort. I was close with him. We did a lot of stuff. But he was definitely like kind of, I wouldn't say like a tough guy, but he just wouldn't really put up with all the crap. He didn't want to deal with all whatever. He wanted to get on with it. He was like a straight shooter. So now, to your point, I'm starting skating at 13, at 14. You don't know this probably, but you finish school in England when you're 15, 16.
Okay, so that's when you finish high school.
So I'm finishing high school. I've already been traveling Europe. I'm...
By yourself or with friends?
Well, you got to realize skating's like a religion. It's like going to the gym and boxing. It's like going surfing. So now I have, a bunch of people that are older than me coming over to my house for the last year. My mum opens up our house. Here's the tea. Here's the biscuits. We're all hanging out. My dad was always down for what we were doing. He didn't say a lot, but he would put us all in the van from work. He'd drive us 4 hours to a skate contest. So my family knows everyone to the point that when my mum passed, my friend Barry Wong carried the coffin.
Wow.
When my mum passed, I went to the door to tell my friends who just came to see me, and my sister said, my mom just passed. Some of them are so freaked out. And my friend Barry said, I want to see her. He didn't say, can I see her? He said, I want to see her. He came that in,
level of closeness.
Kissed her on the head to where my dad had, he'd already mourned her for 2 years now. She's got cancer. We're all like in shock. His kissing my mother on the head was more like closure for us, for who her life was.
Wow.
And I say that to say, my family embraced all my friends. They were good examples. Sure, they partied. They got drunk on the weekend like everyone in England. They just did whatever.
Your parents?
No, but they did growing up, but then my friends, I'm saying.
Yeah.
So now they're older than me. At 15, I'm getting sponsored. You kind of know it plays out. Hey, will you go to America? My friend Jeff Rowley, who had got me sponsored, was living there. I'm 15, I'm 16. Hey, guys, I'm going to go to America for 3 months. Okay, well, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. But they already know. My dream was bigger than the chaos. So I come over here for 3 months, go back. Over here for 3 months, go back. Come back on a 6-month visa. I might have drank a couple of times. I mean, I didn't really chase girls too much because I was focused on skating. All my friends were partying and doing that, but I don't want to get in trouble with the police. I don't want to do whatever. So I'm back to the point I'm saying that's where the maturity was. You're asking how did that end up? My parents just trusted me. They
and it
just
sounds like
believed.
that culture was different too in the sense of like now you're lucky to get your kid out at like early 20s.
30. They're in the basement playing video games.
Yeah, which isn't ideal for any. That's not
anyone.
what we want. But even like 18, 19, 20
Yeah.
is kind of like I think where I would expect my kids to get out.
And especially at his age, my son's 19, has a girlfriend for pretty much 2 or 3 years. Her 2 sisters just got married in the last 2 years, the older ones. So they're already planning in a year or so. But you live in California. We got this house almost 20 years ago. Our mortgage is like nothing. Where's he going to go?
Yeah.
What are they going to go do? So the point is, my parents trusted what I was doing. I come over. I'm not a believer. I'm living this whole lifestyle. It wasn't like it was crazy, but because skating was the goal. I'm meeting with constant photographers, filmers. You almost have a level of maturity you have to have just to be able to. You're a professional athlete. It's like you are getting up daily and skating 6 or 7 hours a day. It's you don't realize it, but it's a craft. You can then aim that at your faith, aim that at your marriage. So
that's good.
Yeah.
So all right, so you're here, and then you meet a girl. So let's talk a little bit about this. So you decided to get married at 19.
Well, when I was about 16, I have a shaved head, and my body was definitely disproportionate. I was just like this baby, like Puma or something, just all like oafy looking. Not really, but just like big features and like long arms and whatever. And then now she's got a boyfriend going back and forth to New Jersey. And then all my friends are always trying to set her up with everyone, because her best friend was married to dating my friend Jeff. So then she comes back and I'm 17, 18. And now the braces are gone. Now I look like a man a little bit more. Not much. I still haven't got arm hair. But she's like, okay, that's Brian. So then we start connecting. And please, no one, don't do this. So we'd been together for 4 months, non-stop, every day.
How did that affect your skating?
I was just skating. So
you'd still skate and then go hang out with her?
So she'd be at work, I'd go in and eat, and then I'm going skating. She'd be in the car with me. That's a skater. Skaters bring their girlfriends or bring their dog. So now, after 4 months, I'm about to go back to England, and I'm like, and it wasn't like this, we're going to go get a passport and do whatever. It was like, I'm not leaving this girl. Like, sure, I'd hang out with other girls. Sure, I'd chase girls too, a little bit. Like, this girl's nice. This girl's whatever. This girl's cool. But I wasn't that guy who was like, chicks. I was like so focused on skating. This girl, I felt like had respect and respected herself and wasn't all just whatever. And so after 4 months, I literally said, hey, let's not tell anyone. Let's drive out to Vegas. Let's get married. And we did. And we drove out there. I couldn't even drive yet. She drove out at like 90 miles an hour to Vegas. We got married off the strip.
Was it just the two of you, or did you take some? No one went with you,
my friend Jeff and his girlfriend Chrissy knew,
but they didn't go.
No, we paid $400 in that chapel, and the pastor I'd never met came out, read 1 Corinthians 13. A woman came out and said, "I witnessed this." We went back to the hotel and hung out at New York, and we had a baby 10 months later, and then that's life. So we were divorced within 2.5 years, which is crazy.
So how did that epic love story?
Well,
right, because I know you're kind of joking, like we went to Vegas, everything. But if you hear or you saw that in a movie, it's like people would eat it up.
Oh, they'd love it. Yeah. If you made a story about that part of our life, it's crazy.
So then how did it fall apart?
It fell apart because, for one, theologically, you put two sinners together, you don't know what you're doing. Someone is single, living their life, and they realize, I have hatred sometimes too much, or I take advantage of people this much, or I'm great, or whatever.
Yeah.
You put two people together, you begin to see that, and it gets exposed. So we came into it saying happily ever after. This is the Disney dream. This is going to be it. And now, I'm just paying for everything, doing whatever. We have no system, no boundaries.
And now money is good because you're a pro athlete.
You're making $12,000 to $20,000 a month easy. You're making shoe royalties, whatever. And she doesn't care about money. It wasn't like we're buying all this dumb stuff. We're just trying to love this kid and whatever. But we're both pretty intense. She's pretty much intense as well. So over the course of that time and fighting, and there was no infidelity, there's nothing like that. Before long, we're like, you know what? Maybe this isn't right. Maybe this isn't what we should have done. Maybe that person or this person's better for you. We were buying the lie that, and here's the big deal. This is normally, for those listening, this is normally 2 years in your marriage or 5 years in, even a year, sadly now. They say 80% of millennials by the date, 2020, will be ready to walk out of their marriages for no reason. Not even because of infidelity. They'll have their first house, their first kid, but they're so used to just buying a different Subaru, camping a different place, getting a different job. They're so used to changing the system, they're proclaiming that possibly 80% will be ready to go. This just isn't the right person. So we went in with that idea. I wouldn't fight with this one. We were missing what God was doing. God's trying to get you to die yourself. God's actually doing a work, but we don't know Christ. My toes are getting stepped on because I don't know how to love her like Christ loved the church. She's in rebellion, like Genesis says. She'll seek to have rule over me. That's part of it. I mean, there's still pain in childbirth. We're still under the curse in the flesh. So just that's like, wait a minute. Skating worked out. Money worked out. The scale worked out. Oh, wait, marriage is upside down. Maybe we made a mistake. And I just lost it. Like, okay.
Because then you didn't understand what the point of marriage was, is basically what you're saying.
There's no point, but I love this person. And if your love isn't feeling like love, if it's not the ahava or the agape love the Bible says, which is a choice, God chose to put his love on us. In that book, Song of Songs, where it says, don't arouse or awaken love until it desires. What does that even mean? It means do not put your committed, dedicated, dying to self-love on that person until you're ready. Don't wear the ring. Don't take the last name. Don't get in bed. Shed the blood. It's a covenant till you are ready. And that means
to make that choice.
Well, that's what he means. While we were still sinners,
yep.
Christ died. Am I ready to daily get up? Do I get up and go, I'm just ready to die for Tracy today? No. I get up and I'm like, where's my food? I heard a pastor say, I don't even feel like a Christian till I've had 2 coffees and read the Bible. And that's jest, but you know what I'm going.
Yeah.
You could get back from this trip and you're like, babe, I'm drained. The flight was this and Brian went on too long and I stubbed my toe. And you're not waking up like, hey, I'm the father.
Dude, that's money right there. It's a choice. It's a choice.
It's a choice. Yeah.
But it's really tough, man, because I get what you're saying. Like we could cut Jesus out of all of this. And then we make the choice. We make the choice. But there's not a. But behind the choice,
it has to be
what
Christ.
Is the why?
There's not.
Right. What is
not.
that reason? And so you said at the beginning, there's the world, and then there's Christ. Okay?
Either I've been purchased by the blood, and I'm the doulos, the servant of the Lord. If I'm a servant, which is literally translated slave, Jesus says, "You're no longer my servants, because you're my friends. Because I've now told you. What have you told us? That's your wife. I brought you one woman. She's the object of affection. This is her standard."
Okay, so let me ask you this.
Yeah.
You said, I brought you one woman.
Yeah.
Do you think that...
Yeah, go wherever. Let's go. Yeah.
Do you think that you could do the same thing with another woman? Meaning Tracy didn't show up that day. It was Jeff's girlfriend.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So
is my wife listening to this? I'm kidding. Yeah.
No, because my point is...
Yeah. There's a promise in God, so let's say...
Okay, so you think that it is?
I think this. We think there's the one, okay?
Right, that she's my soulmate or whatever.
So, to a Jew, to a Hebrew, there's no such thing as chance or luck. God is sovereign. You never find that in the Bible. They cast lots because they believe whatever it falls on, that is God's divine choice. We don't cast lots today because we have to
roll the dice.
Roll the dice. That's what we would say it is, but it's not. The priest cast lots. I'm preaching on it this weekend, the atonement. They cast lots, and wherever it fell, that was the goat that was sacrificed. It's sovereign. Judas had to betray Jesus exactly when he did. It was Passover. It was a certain amount of 1,000 years. So what I'm saying is, if I hadn't remarried Tracy and married anyone else, that's my wife. Once I say I do, that's my wife. But if Tracy today walked out, and I tell guys this, I literally sit with men, and sometimes it's a phone call, who say, man, my wife's in bed with this person, they're doing this, da-da-da-da. I literally told a friend of mine recently, I'd never met the guy, we talked many times over years, and his wife had, and I talked to many people, so this could be anyone.
Yep.
But I'm saying his wife had committed adultery, fully repented, supposedly. First question I said was, is she a believer? Yes. Okay, is she a follower? Not does she believe it's all real? Satan knows it's real. Is she wanting to follow Jesus? I don't mean perfect.
Right.
But is it a conviction where if you're suddenly looking at me reading a Hustler magazine over here, or I'm getting text on my phone, you'd be like, whoa, bro, I don't think I'm going to put this up. As I'm sitting with that friend, through the phone conversation, hey, she's back at it again. She's doing this, she's doing that, blah, blah, blah. We have a couple of kids. I don't think she wants it. What should I do? I'm like, literally, open the Bible, read through Proverbs 5, 6, and 7. The verse literally will tell her, you are living like a whore. Whoa, she needs to be confronted with her sin. She needs to have addressed where she is. Brian, why are you saying that? Because if she really doesn't want to follow Christ, and she's really in opposition, and she doesn't want this, You keep loving her. You're free to divorce her because these grounds. It's psychological. It's crazy. I mean, it's the worst thing that could happen in a marriage. But I'm also the guy that's for forgiveness and believes God can fully save a person that's maybe reprobate right there, whatever's happening. But if they fully separated, if my wife divorced me this week, whoever I go on to marry, that's now my wife. And I've told men, when she divorces you, when whatever happens, it's no longer your wife. The whole of God's grace and mercy is now shifted to you and your singleness. And she's on her own walking with God in his own singleness. God can restore that. He restored ours. And I tell people, don't go be in bed with someone. Don't go get a porn addiction going.
Yeah.
God might restore it. Sometimes a divorce, sadly, is what wakes one of them up.
Yes, let's talk about that in a second. Yeah. But the reason I asked the question is when I hear that statement, you said,
my soulmate or whatever.
Yeah. Then people go, oh shoot, I don't think I'm with that one.
If you married her,
then she's the one. Yes, thank you. I love that.
Listen,
it's
here's why.
Important.
Okay, the greatest miracle is when God took you and me, every human that's dead, and saved them. That's a miraculous work of God. It isn't a prayer you say. I get it. You can do that. There's a prayer. God leads you. I mean, I'm not saying everyone's done that, but when he took a dead person and regenerated them, made them born again, John 3, that's a miracle. What's the other second greatest miracle after that? It has to be what? It's not parting an ocean. It's not getting your kids to bed early. I mean, that is a miracle sometimes. It's literally, how did God make one out of me and my wife? This whole issue with, gender and all the rest of it, God takes a man and a woman, puts them together. That's a supernatural work. If you say I do, if you go into that marriage, even if they're unequally yoked, it's not what's best, but if that goes together, God's in it to pastor it, and he will honor it. And here's the thing for people who are going through it right now. I'm bleeping, sick of this person, my marriages. Guys, listen. People get woke up. This book is filled with stories of people that had affairs, got shook, and I'm best friends with them today. And they have set boundaries, and their marriages and their children are better than ever.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying that's it.
That's good.
The idea is you place your love on that person. Like, and I've said it a lot, because it's true, it's funny. But we were going to call the book "Death by Marriage," and people laughed. But that's what marriage is: dying to self. And then when they asked Billy Graham's wife, "Do you ever think about divorcing Billy?" she said, "No, but I think about killing him every day." And I mean, if she's saying that, and granted, the guy was gone a lot, but that just tells you something, So
that's funny. All right, so thinking back to your own marriage, your early 20s, you guys decide to get separated, you find Jesus, and you decide, hey, I want to be back with you.
Yeah.
I would like to know just a couple things, like practically.
Yep.
Like practical, you divorce and you get back.
Yeah. How
that happened?
Well, I'm reading everything under the sun, watching everything under the sun to disprove it. I'm from England, so we want to use our intellect and our mind. I'm reading about every kind of religion. And I'm doing,
so early 20s, you're reading about every kind of religion because you're depressed.
Well, yeah, and it wasn't depressed like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing. It was like, I'm over it. I got in 8 fist fights in 1 month one time. Like, and I didn't start any of them. I was just angry, frustrated, skating worked out, money worked out, America worked out. And now I'm going to end up being with some other woman, and my kid's going to be with her, and she's going to be with someone else. Like, really?
So you're just pissed about it.
I'm just pissed. I'm a perfectionist with OCD. Like, what? Really? And we were on and off, love, hate. So I'm trying to disprove it all. Because of some of those fights, get community service in a Christian thrift store while I'm going, reading all these books. I mean, I'm harassing rabbis and priests and all these different faiths. Other Mormons show up on the door. I'm like, hey, I bought this house. Her parents, like I said, live down the street. And I'd gone to community service, and a friend of mine, Christian Osoy, had got out of jail, who'd came to faith while in there. And he'd been sharing with me. And I was at a stage where I'd heard everything from the Christians and all the rest, and many were just like saying whatever, and then some were really sincere, and then some really knew the Bible. A lot of them just didn't seem to. And I was like, okay, this is answering a lot of the questions of the Matthew 7:21. Many call him Lord, but he'll say, depart from me, I never knew you. And so literally in this room, I came home one night, and I'd heard preaching very specific from the pastor at the old church on Galatians 5, Matthew 7:21, and I came home and said, Lord, I've been coming to you for my own life. I've been coming to you for my marriage and for my sake, and Not that these things were an idol. I didn't know the Lord yet. I could probably preach. I was already in the Greek and the Hebrew. I was retaining it. This is all I was doing. I had stacks of DVDs from the History Channel and emails and documents from universities and stuff I was tracking down. But in this room, I was like, Lord, I need forgiveness. It was about sin. It was about my separation from God. It wasn't about my wife. And I literally said, I lay down my life. You know, when you come to faith, you don't know what you're praying. You just know that God's good. He's faithful. He's leading you. And we see that in the scriptures. There is a preaching of the gospel. People hear, respond. There's a conviction. He does that work. And I said, I give you my life. Lay down my skating. I'll get baptized. I'll remarry this woman. And that was like scary because I don't want to get married again.
Why did it matter to you? Why did this?
Because for my son, for my wife, for that love that was there. If you're God and you have this,
but even without God, you're pursuing. You are so hungry to figure out how to make all of life work.
All of life work. That's
but for some reason, she was a part of that all of life. And I'm not. I never.
Well, there was a love and a hate. I mean, there was like a. You know, this whole idea of okay, Lord, I'll remarry this woman. And the crazy thing is, so I have this whole experience, and it was an experience. It wasn't like, oh, I guess this makes sense. It was like, I was born again in that room. That was an office at the time. My two youngest went here. I'm laughing and crying. I can't believe this is real. No one knows this. Why did no one tell me? I'm having all these thoughts. I go and lay down in our bedroom. My wife doesn't talk. She's probably talking.
Was she living here with you at the time?
So that's the point. So we were separated. But I was like, let's just stay together in my mind so that by the time my son's 4 or 5, if life's crazy, I haven't got to be here, but at least he'll know I made the effort. At least I can tell him, he can know me. And that's how crazy it was. I mean, it was crazy. I go lay down in there and she sits up like a zombie and gives this like 10-minute speech about all the stuff I just prayed, like all the stuff I just talked about. And the next day, and she's like, I don't know why we fight. I don't know why life's like this and that. We should do this. We should do that. And she doesn't talk like that. Like, she's probably said less things in our marriage than I've said this whole podcast. And I'm joking, but I'm saying we're English. We talk and run on sentences. I wake up the next day, come out here, I'm going to follow Christ. What? You're crazy. You're not even a Catholic. You're not even baptized. She's Italian-Mexican, has no idea what she said the night before. I just keep witnessing. And in 3 weeks, she comes to faith at a church where the pastor literally said, go tell that girl to come forward. He was a guest speaker. He didn't even know. He didn't know she was like...
Yeah.
So that ends up happening. We get remarried, I want to say 3 to 6 months later. We just celebrate our first anniversary. That's why we keep the original date. We just forgot about this. We just went back to the original.
But there was a time period where you guys get separated. You actually get divorced.
Fully divorced.
But you're still living here together.
Fighting like crazy, just yelling, mad, just like, ugh. It's just...
But you wanted to because your son. There was something important to you to be in your son's life.
And what's better? Is it better that I then go and like have some other relationship with someone and that's the next thing? Or she goes and does this? And I tell couples this. I'm like, I'll sit with couples and men will be like, but this. I'm like, are you ready to show up to the baseball game and you see another guy grabbing your wife's rear end? And they're like, whoa, bro. I go, are you ready? That's life. Are you ready? Because you're going to your kid's party when he has a baby. You're going as a grandparent. Are you really ready? I remember a friend of mine years ago, Chris Ortiz, who just said it's easier to stay together. He'd gone through a divorce, that it's just easier to stay together. And I was like, it just sounded like truth. And again, I wanted it to be, and I'm not saying that, listen, God hates divorce, but he doesn't hate people who are divorced. He doesn't hate people like that.
Right.
It's, you can have a spouse that's just out. They're done. They're gone. And I mean, man, they're not really following Jesus. It's heinous what ends up happening. But here's the thing for the men who are going through this, or women that are listening for the men, God is enough. And we don't actually believe that a lot of the time. I can believe for you in this podcast all day, but when I come home and if I've gone through that and there's no one in the house and I can't hear my kids, like, what? I have to make Jesus, and he is, but I mean, I have to be able to go, you are enough, and that's hard. That's real faith and faith substance. So back to your point though, we remarried. It just felt like that was the thing. And then right away we had to go, okay, what does the Bible say about marriage? What are these verses?
Yeah, so what are the practical things? You're like, all right, practically, one, you stayed in the same house because it was important for you to be around your kid.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was a practical thing.
Houses in California aren't too, cheap, so...
Yeah, it's hard to move. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but yeah.
Yeah, but there was something there. So the
practical things, you're saying, what was the... Well...
I mean, you still seem to serve her even through that.
Yeah, I mean, I paid
'Cause you
for what
didn't
was needed. I didn't do any of that stuff.
You didn't go sleep around because it's like, all right,
we were
divorced.
separated. So we were separated for a year or so. So we had, there's things that happened there where we brought back in later on that we talked about. And that's why it's almost easier to connect with people. But because we weren't believers, it was like, okay. I mean, we weren't virgins when we came into the marriage. So it's almost like, and then you see how that stuff doesn't, listen, you go out the house today, that woman that's walking through wherever, she's done her hair, she smells good, she's gone to the gym, she's trying to present herself a certain way, not just to be beautiful. I get it. I want to give as much dignity and the rest. But my mom, before she passed away, said men used to expose women, but now women are exposing themselves.
Wow.
And I'm not saying that to degrade women.
No,
but I'm saying
the culture,
in the garden, they were at least naked and ashamed. But today, everyone wants to be naked and they're not ashamed. I mean, you can't even, MTV for you and me growing up, you may be seeing someone's chest or someone dancing around a pole. I mean, you can't put, I don't even mean a rap video with a male rapper. I mean, these famous people like Nicki Minaj and all these people, they're dancing around in 6-inch heels. Miley Cyrus doing just gross things on awards. So I'm like, it's everywhere. You know what I mean? And so I think for us, it was the family, this idea, God.
Yeah.
And it's not been easy. I mean,
So that's a good transition. I want to go into another question.
Yeah.
Okay, so you live maybe not a wild life, because you were around a lot of wild stuff. I mean, the crew that you skated with was a bunch of rowdies.
Yeah.
And maybe you weren't participating in that as much just because the skateboarding was so important, not because of certain convictions you had at 18, 19, 20. But now you have a son who's, he's 19.
Yeah.
But I heard you say that like he didn't even have Instagram till 18.
Yeah.
But you let him have a girlfriend before that.
And so, and even this is great I'm glad you're tracking that. So the idea is, I don't know why, but we're just really protective. Like, we're really protective where our kids don't stay the night with people. What is it? 1 in 7 people have been molested. That's crazy. Like, that's real. You know what I mean? 98% of people.
Yeah, man, I got 4 daughters, so that's something that if my kids stay the night somewhere, I walk over to that house and I look that man in the eye.
On the outside, yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, I'm very protective.
Right. So that's in
that area.
So we're very protective in that sense, where we're like, okay, family and the rest of it, it's serious. But so we're protective. So now, and I'll be open. It's funny because even having a son, he's 9, he's 10. And he starts asking those questions and talking about stuff. He's on a baseball team with all the kids, and he's learning about, hearing this word and that word and things. And so you're realizing, and this is back then when Mark Driscoll had wrote his book, what was it, Real Marriage or something like that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, hey, the church doesn't always talk about these things. We make them taboo. There's Christians that literally get married and feel so bad about being physical because they've always been told, don't,
Mm-hmm.
but there's no understanding of it. And then there's the shame and then the emotion, there's no passion and whatever. So we will literally at this time, Instagram's only 6 or 7 years old or something. We would just pick a couple that were like, we don't want him, we don't drink, so I don't want my kid opening the fridge and he sees water, lemonade, milk, and alcohol. So then if he has that demon, not that it's a little demon, but if that's his obsession later, it's just going to wipe him out. More women are abused, raped, people killed, dead from alcohol. So I'm just
so this is good.
So we're very protective because this is our fathering. So
because you're intentional about it. So but the question is like, okay, how, I mean, because you went from extreme to extreme, extreme skating to extreme love of Jesus.
Extreme.
It is extreme.
300 years the church is persecuted. You don't hear, we're living in the most persecuted time today. 1 in 12 Christians in the world, 215 million enter eternity every year, persecuted. Most people don't know that.
Yeah, that's
so
bonkers.
It is crazy, but it was extreme in skating. And literally, and I'll explain it like this. He's in the other room. Maybe he could join us later. But I was just like, okay, if my wife looks at anything working out and her Instagram's attached to mine, all these workout videos show up, which means some of them are then going to have more crude stuff on. Some of them are going to have whatever. I'm like, why do I want my 13, 14-year-old son to see numerous amounts of boobs? Why do I want him to see just foul, vulgar things that are on there, lowering the standard of what what it means to just have affection for, I mean...
Okay, so let's talk about this one thing. Let's talk about sex for a second. So you're protecting from Instagram, protecting from, the stuff I'm guessing that's on television.
Yeah.
But you're letting him have a girlfriend. Yeah. And you said a minute ago, like sometimes religion can make like if I grew up, let's say typical in a mind, you might say, oh, a homeschool kid doesn't know how to live in the world and get married. They're not even intimate with their spouse because they don't know. So how do you not go to the extreme of like, kids don't even know what sex is to
allowing the girlfriend.
Well, allowing intimacy so that, they didn't, because I get it.
Well, I'll help you. You guys being younger, I'll help some of you out, right? So here's how it works.
Okay.
So he's 9, 10. And he says something, like, hey, I had a dream and it was this person and she was on like a bridge or something like this. And it was just like, it wasn't like crazy, but it was like, okay, already as a man, there's things there. There was nothing crazy, but as a man, if you live in Jerusalem thousands of years ago, Mary was probably 13 or 15, 16, whatever it is.
Yeah.
If you and I were raised there, we'd have already been probably married at 14, 15, 16.
Right.
So those hormones are there. Even Song of Songs says for him to kiss her on the lips. The emotion's there. So he's now 14, 15, had shared things that his friends had said, things that he'd seen already, and we're like, okay, this is way too early. Taking into mind, I was preaching even 2 months ago at a camp, and a 13-year-old girl came up to me in tears after I preached on Hebrews, didn't look at me and said, I've been looking at pornography since I was 11. This is a girl, a tiny, skinny, blonde girl that looks just like my daughter. So for 2 years, this girl's been seeing these crazy images.
Just poison.
So now she goes into a bedroom and she thinks she has to... I get the marriage bed is not going to be defiled, but does she have to think like these porn stars are acting? Or does she expect men to be the way these porn stars are treating these girls? It's already a just lame, satanic, skewed idea. And we've all been exposed to it. So for my son, now he's 13, 14, we've had all these conversations. My wife's had him, and he's a normal, funny, goofy kid. He's got his friends. They're talking about, men doing this to themselves, and when girls start doing this, and you guys are going to hear it all. That's just the way it goes. We literally are going on a missions trip to Costa Rica, and we have a family of friends, and the gentleman, does jiu-jitsu with me. He's the elder at our church. Again, back to his girlfriend. We go to Costa Rica on a mission trip, and we're all out surfing, and everyone comes in, and they're just out there together. And I'd been in our garage outside, and literally driving away, I felt like, I don't know why, but I can see you, and her name's Cameron, and she was like taller than him, pink face, white hair, like little surfer girl, and he was like this little kid, hadn't even hit his growth yet. I was like, I don't know why, but I feel like the Lord just is showing me this, and I don't get that way. And so
you're saying that you thought that, and your son wasn't even dating her yet.
We had a life group with other families, and if anything, he was hanging out with one of the girls here. We'd just come over, and they were like little bros and friends, and everyone's like, oh, maybe they'll, but it's just funny. So now I feel like I get that impression, and I'm not the impression guy. I'm not like, make your leg grow or whatever, chase fire tunnels. I'm the guy who's like conservative. So we're in Costa Rica, and they're out, and they come back in, and it's like, okay, funny. So now they're back home. This is that family, the Bradley's youngest daughter, so they're used to going through it with 3 kids. But to us, this is our first kid, and we're like, what? The Bible says to treat other women like your mothers if they're older, or your sisters if they're younger. So I'm like, well, why even kiss a girl? We're gonna like making out with your sister or your mom. I'm just being all extreme. But so what happens is through that whole bond of where we are very protective, and they're still very protective. They have boundaries. Obviously, nothing before marriage. He's 16, 10, and 17. She's just 16. So we had to have those conversations. Hey. We said he wouldn't court or date or whatever till a certain age, but because we're so close and they're so accountable and they're in youth group and no one's driving you, and we had to ride that thing out till they were 16, 17. And then here's the other thing. If kids are going to find a way to sneak booze out or go smoke, get stoned, or look at porn or do whatever, they're going to find a way.
Right.
You can't police someone at that age, and I get it. So we had to say, okay, Lord, we're trusting. And I trust my son. Do I not doubt that if you and me are 16, 17, having girlfriends and they smell good and they're saying this and they're saying that, and we're speaking about what marriage will be like, man, your mind goes there. The sad thing is that so many kids just jump into it and they just get exposed to it, and then there's more shame. So we had them ride that whole thing out to our knowledge.
Being friends,
accountable, whatever. Right. And then even when they first it sounds funny talking about it all, but then we're a little bit closer as far as we'll hold hands, put their arms around each other. Okay. Like we're over here the other night and we're watching a movie, Old Bugsy Malone. My kids are here. She's here with Dakota, and they're sitting next to her on the couch. So we just have her family that's accountable, the two older sisters that are accountable, us asking the tough questions accountable. That's just it.
See, that's the thing is you're engaged with poor dudes in the next room, but you are engaged as a parent.
That's what you just said, engaged, that's it.
Yeah, because most parents, I don't want to say most, a lot of parents, it's just like they just want to live in this idea that they just don't want to know. Yeah. So then it just lets
that's not really parenting.
No, it's not, because then you're just letting the kid navigate this themselves. And shoot, if you're going to put me in this room with her and let me figure it out myself, well, I'm naturally going to figure out to do this thing because that's how I'm made.
Well, you don't think, like I said, back to the Instagram thing, you can be looking through anything and someone can post a very crazy thing that's almost pornographic and it's like it's there.
I have tons of friends who are like, oh, that's cool, you're doing that on Instagram now, but I actually am not on social media anymore because of the temptation.
Because the wife's like, no, this is not what I don't want you looking at this stuff over. And that's
tough, man.
It is. And so and I've had those conversations over and over and over. Hey, you're doing this. Hey, it's not me. It's God. It's her dad. It's this. This is the things. And like we've walked through all the verses. We've done that. But
so just coming back to like you're having an engaged conversation with them. You're in it. And then I guess let me ask this.
Yeah.
How are you setting your children up to have healthy, intimate relationships with their spouses one day?
Well, one of the things we do good here is, and this is again going back to just John Piper stuff when I was coming to faith, listening to all the don't waste your life, ask Pastor John, is, with anything, it's like this. You go to school, you might remember what you read, but it's more that you learn to read. So getting up being a dad is like, what is your practice? If I've blown it, if I've gotten mad at a time or frustrated or said something like, oh, why did I say this? To my son, to my kids, it's like, look, at the end of the day, I'm fully dependent on Christ. On my best day and my worst day, that book's what I believe. These are the songs I wish I was singing all day. I wish I could repent to every person I've wronged, if intentionally or not. And I want to go to my grave in Christ. That's the picture of Christianity. That's the Beatitudes. That's the gospel. That's the good news that a Jew would understand. We're living towards this God. In the practical, it becomes, how do you live this out? I'm intentionally affectionate towards their mom. I make a point of, I don't want anything around me exposed to me. I don't think it's right to crush on people or whatever. We just live in a flirty state now. It's just everything's flirty. You get jobs by being flirty. You're working at Starbucks, everyone's flirting. Everyone's wearing their yoga pants. Everyone's trying to be Mr. GQ. It's just there. So we just make the point to be intentional about each other. And I'd rather even go through it with mom at times, which isn't crazy. We're not like all over the place. But I don't mind them even seeing us in our seasons, which I'm the guy that wants to fix everything right there. Being intentional and them knowing it's just dad and mom. That's our offering as a couple. The Bible, a life, back to the Great Commission. That's back to it. And the Great Commission isn't separated from Christianity. That's whatever you do. Going doesn't mean go to Africa. I don't feel called to go to Africa. I'm going to Canada. I feel called there. You feel called to a podcast. Going is this passive verb that's like just go wherever you are. So our thing has become that book I wrote, a life of ministry. And if I was a businessman, it would be doing unto the Lord, learning to be loving, learning to be repentant. And listen, and humility preaches the most though. The greatest sin is pride, because that's where it all begins with Satan, So for us, I would think that if something happened with him and his girlfriend, they would feel it and know it and have to go repent to people. And if I asked them, be very open and clear, yeah, we did in this, and no, it was so lame for us, it would be such a big deal, you know what I mean? But that's the kind of pressure that we can put on each other, and you need that accountability. But that comes down to the individual. You can have men at church who are like, oh, I got a porn problem. Don't look at those boobs. Don't look at this. No. You're missing the point. You're obsessed with your problem. It's go focus on what God's called you to do. It's not like, oh, I can't stop thinking about smoking weed by not thinking about it. No, that's the brainwashing. That's the trap. So we try and do things by example. And
yeah, it sounds like you have a lot of open conversation with your kids. Like, it sounds like
most open.
Like, you can talk about stuff.
Yeah, and then I know when he doesn't want to talk about stuff, and I'm like, and I'm the guy that will say it. I'm the guy, well, this. I honestly...
So what do you mean you're the guy that'll say it? You mean call it out that you don't want to talk, so
I'm the guy
on?
that I get a phone call from people when things are bad. They know Brian's going to tell me, what do you do? And it's not like, I'm not that guy. I'm not the guy who's like, oh, you're a dork and this. But I mean, I get a call when it's like, okay, it's bad. Like, so they know I'm going to go to bat for everyone. Like, I'm for everyone. If you sinned, I'm for you. You know what I mean? Like
that's what the church is.
That's what the church is. It's like,
but that's not what people think it is.
They don't.
But
think
it is.
It's not. It's not. It's look. I mean, again, back to that idea of just the marriage book. There's so many people who've gone through so much crazy stuff. God's a redemptive God. Are we living at a lower standard than we should be? Well, that's sadly the story of the Bible. Israel never had to be exiled. They didn't need 400 years of bondage. The Red Sea never needed to be parted. None of these things had to happen. There never had to actually be a Noah's Ark. But this is fallen man. Now, am I going to pastor a church, if I ever did, and say, oh, we all just like suck and we're lame and who cares? No, I'm going to preach holiness. I'm going to preach the Great Commission. I'm going to preach pursuing, being diligent with your hands. And that's what we're living into. There's a big difference between the sins of commission and omission. You know, like, again, I'm preaching on the atonement this week because when you send the scapegoat out, and we need to hear this as believers, that goat, the blood was sent away, and when he disappears, and the last guy goes, I can't see him no more. The idea is, oh, my sins are forgiven as far as the east is from the west. We don't know where the goat's gone, and my sin's gone. And that literally meant to the Jews, the sins I know I committed and the sins I don't know I committed.
Yeah.
And so that means to someone who's sitting there going, man, I got a porn problem. You know what? Yeah, you do. And here's the deal, and I'll sell this to people. I don't think like this, but if you put 50 naked women in front of a load of men and sat them there and they love their wives and they don't want to cheat and they don't want to do anything, if you put them there for 3 days, are they going to begin to, if they start looking, have thoughts they shouldn't, think things they shouldn't, even go places in their mind they shouldn't? Yes, because Paul said, wretched man that I am, and that literally means if you and I committed a crime 2,000 years ago, your payment often would be they take a dead body and they tie it to you, and you'd walk around with feces coming out of that body and eyeballs and goo and dead flesh. And Paul says that's what the Christian life is. The dead Brian is right here. And every time you punch the person in the face, it would feel great when you get pulled over and the cops chewing you out to be like, you know what I really think? But you got to put that man to sleep. The idea that you want to go, and here's the thing, you should have a lower threshold of wanting to run into these sins because you set boundaries. I know men that when they went into a hotel, they tell the hotel, I will not stay in the room if there's a TV there. They don't even want to see the weather, girl. They don't even want a phone. Their wife has the passcode, and I get it. So there's levels to all of this. Like everything.
Boundaries, setting good boundaries. So, and then letting your kids see that.
Well, God's not going to break your fingers. Oh, I'm typing in this. My fingers are broken. No, God's like, I have given you the power that you're not using.
Yeah.
And please, I hope no one feels the shame, but conviction's good. I mean, the goodness of the Lord leads us to repentance. My kids came in right now and said, what the bleep are you guys doing? I'd be like, really? This is how my kid represents me? And that's how I think Christianity and God presents it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, no, this is good. So I want to ask a question because it matters to you, and then we'll wrap this up. It matters to you how your kid represents you.
Yeah.
So as a very strong man of faith and having children,
yeah,
how do you raise them up that their identity isn't just we got to be good because our dad has this image. Yeah. And I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing that you have this image, but you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, okay, I have this identity that I feel very strong about, and I'm bringing my children up. How do you let them also experience life to get to the places that they need to get? Ooh, that's tough.
I'm an outward processor, so that's kind of how I work. Like I normally, and maybe that's why I'm an evangelist. Most evangelists kind of think like that. Like my daughter at this age is starting, I remember just being 13 and having OCD and starting to touch things and do that. And I'm seeing it in her in little ways. And to her, it's like this big deal. And to me, it's like, oh yeah, this is just that age. I mean, babe, your body's changing and your legs are growing and your teeth are going to start sticking out. And sure, some chemicals are going places. So I would get in the car after Mom might have told me something that has happened in her day or whatever. And I'll just like, hey, listen. And I just try and get to it then, speak life, speak whatever, and look, the hard thing is our youngest is very wild, crazy, like almost oppositional. So you have two, he's 9, she's 12, so they're like best of friends or crazy. And sadly, in those moments, they won't listen unless it's like you have to raise your voice. And for some of the couples out there, listen, only a man can really raise a man. Like if you're a single mom, you can raise that kid and he's going to be just how God wanted him to. But I see my son and I see how he's acting like a man. My wife doesn't see that. She sees her baby. Yeah. But when she sees my daughter, she sees a woman. I don't see that. I see my baby girl. So how I'm going to speak to my son is very different than my wife. And the classic thing to do, and I'm not saying this anymore, but how many women say, well, he's always shouting. And I say, the number one thing to throw at men now is, well, you're emotionally abusive. So if a man shouts, he's emotionally abusive. He's built differently. His anatomy is different. His voice is going to be deeper. Women can be just as wild. But what I'm saying is, for me with my kids, my wife learned, because we were probably divorced, got back together. My oldest could almost get away with so much until he got to about 9 or something. My wife realized, okay, if I interject everything that my husband's saying, I'm nullifying that voice. Basically like castrating a man, you would say, you know what I mean? And he's not hearing the dad's voice. And then likewise with my wife, for my daughter, I have to be able to step back and say, I need her to catch her as a woman. So that's where we had to learn the roles, and it's hard.
Dude, that right there, that last
yeah.
That is rich.
But we had to come to it.
Yeah. But us listening now, I'm like, oh, cool. I'm going to take that now.
Well, because if my youngest came in and he says this, I'd be like, don't talk to your mom like that. And I remember saying, and listen, my kids are great. My oldest, you should hire him. He is a stud. But the things he might have said to me or my wife, I don't mean cussing us out or whatever. And if he did, I've got grace all day. But that's things I'd said, she's my wife before she's your mom. And I know that's not even really what I mean. It's true. I want you to have the closest relationship. But if that was a kid that was crazy, I have to say those things to you. I have to address those things. Likewise, my daughter's going to unpack differently to my wife. And so, and here's just to summarize a lot of thoughts. When I'm going and preaching on marriage, which I am this weekend, we have friends, you and me could be bros forever. I have my wife. I'm like, yeah, but our being physical is like this or that. And they're like, you're my best friend. Like, no, you are. But my wife needs to be my best friend. Why? Because when we first met, what did we do? We related and we created a relationship. And that's what you lose in a marriage. You have a relationship when you're young, and man, she's pretty and she's attractive and she's cool and she loves me and she's texting me back and we're hanging out and now we're married. Well, now you're on this trip and you're home and man, you smell this day and the food was this. And so now your relating becomes negative. That's how you've got to look at your family. How am I relating to my wife? It's a relationship. How am I relating to my kids? And here's the hard thing for everyone. You could just feel guilt and shame and say yes to your kids for everything and spoil them. And a spoiled kid is spoiled, and there's more of them today. It's getting crazier, than even our generation. But you're going to have to learn not to spare the rod. I mean, there's things that I know. And I told my son this once. I said, if I watch the Ninja Turtles, I'm a Ninja Turtles fan. I think to my sons, I'm more like a Raphael. I'm more like pretty serious. I'm going to go, look, you know what? If you go do this, these are going to be the consequences for you. And I'm like, God has given you a dad. And here's the thing that's funny. God says man is the head. The woman can never be the head of the home. So what does that mean? That God has placed something on the man that he's not placed on the woman. And likewise, there's a mystique on a woman that is not in the man.
Right.
It's not good that he's alone. I need that woman.
Yeah.
But that also means my son can get advice from many men, but I'm his dad. And there's just I'm not saying I'm always going to say the right thing and someone else doesn't have the greatest wisdom. I mean, if I didn't have men who wrote all these books,
yeah,
he goes and sits with his youth pastor. He has great men in his life, but there's also something that when you come sit with your dad and say, hey, but I'm going to go to bat way different for you. I'm going to say things you don't want to hear sooner, that you might leave mad. That's not the intention, but I love you. And I remember that about my dad, saying things. Yeah. My son's leaving his room right now after we've exposed everything. No. But that's the thing is the relating is where I know I started with talking about guys like John Piper and Ravi Zacharias, but it was Ravi who said, because my son used to play baseball a lot, he said, go to the baseball game And when he's playing, relate to him there. Go to jiu-jitsu. When your daughter's painting her nails. You know, a lot of my day, I'll get so busy that we just got a pet lizard the other day. See you later, bud. But when my daughter will come home, they'll get the lizard and go, Daddy's cold, Daddy's this, Daddy's that. Those moments, and here's the thing, though. It's hard, guys. You have bills to pay. Your wife wants the house clean. You guys want to be physical. You want to date. Life is just messy. I don't know anyone. Listen, there's exactly enough time in every day, but we don't get it right. The fact that John Piper wrote, we're not professionals. The fact the Bible says we know in part. And my wife's going to blow it. I'm going to blow it. You're going to blow it. This perfection idea, this money never sleeps. It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's wearing us out. It's creating anxiety.
But then do we just own that and be like, just take a deep breath and be like, this is what it is.
That's what you have to do and be active.
Yeah, because then it's that's why it's like, don't worry about tomorrow. Like, stop trying to think that tomorrow is going to be better.
That's very hard, and here's why. I preach on the 10 Commandments, and you get to the Sabbath, and you're like, oh, what does this even mean? It's so radical because for 400 years, Israel never had rest.
Every day.
They worked every single day. And so Pharaoh wanted the production. Now we become Christians. Think about even the Old Testament. Go out and collect the quail or whatever it was in the wilderness. If you take extra, it's going to be stale. And God was saying, you need to trust me. What Sabbath living in is, do I trust God with my 9 to 5? Do I trust God with my spouse? Do I trust God with my life? Because listen, there is exactly enough time in today for me to do this podcast, go eat with my family in a minute. You know, when we'll go eat some vegan place my wife wants to. I'll come home, I'll pack my bags, hang out with my kids, go to the airport in the morning. My daughter's going. There's exactly enough time in that whole week for me to have written these sermons, be in prayer, navigate it. Some people won't like the time. I'm going to mess up at some time. But I have to live in that mess knowing that's Christianity. And do I trust the Lord in that? Because if not, I'm going to keep working that Sabbath life where I am all about production. And this is where I think the enemy's working the most. How many ads come up on your Facebook or your Instagram? It's a guy in front of a Bentley. It's a guy in front of whatever. Even Elon Musk, who's a genius. I love hearing from the guy. People will work 80 hours a week to then eventually have to only work 10. I get what you're saying, but I would never counsel a man to work 80 hours a week and expect to have a good relationship with his wife and his kids.
When you get down to that 10 hours, everything's going to be gone.
And what's your God in
all
that
the
situation?
stuff you care for.
That's the point. So resting in, back to your point, I'm circling around. This is what, as fast as we think. It's messy. So for my wife, and I'm open. I mean, our book goes into this. It's called Never Fails, if people are wondering.
Yeah, I'm going to post a picture up on Instagram.
But for my wife, when you first get married, you go, wait a minute. So is this like the time of the month? And now in my head, I can go, okay. No, and my wife's not even crazy. She's not one of those women who goes, I'm crazy.
Yeah.
But I know if I'm preaching, I'm more sensitive the last few hours or few days because it's, she has a raw foods little business she's doing. If she's got something to do that weekend, she's going to be more sensitive. That means you're understanding where people are and what's going on. Bible says live with your wives in an understanding way. I think you have to live in life in an understanding way with biblical contentment. Our home is 1,700 square foot. Our mortgage is $1,000-something. I get to live in California. Am I really willing for whatever the Lord has me go through, to preach wherever, to do whatever, to be involved in whatever? Do I really trust you, God? If I do, and we're both living into that, it shouldn't be that crazy.
Yeah.
Unless sin is taken over, unless I'm idle in certain areas, and we're spiritually immature. No one prays like Jesus did. No one preaches like Jesus did. But we can imitate Paul, and if people listening are repentant, if there's humility, if they get planted in a biblical church where there's accountability, God is there pastoring your marriage already. So there's no reason. And the thing is, you just got to love those kids the way you can. Guys, please forgive yourselves. Have grace with your spouse.
Yeah, that's a huge one. Guys are too hard on themselves.
Well, because back to that perfection and everything's right. And look, back to my point, I'll get on a flight and go, man, how was I with my son this week? How was I with my daughter? How was I with my wife? Not because of crazy things, but just like I start and I go, man, the Bible says all of creation cries out in groans for the revealing of the sons of God. This is not our home. It is alien. We are here as his witness, as a living epistles. This is what we need. We need to live in the mess where it's dark as the light. And we're going to blow at times. And I'm not trying out of its agenda when I go to Canada to sneak off and do something crazy. I'm not planning all these things. I'm not. But when I say something, like I go outside right now and someone's keying your car, and I was like, what? And in my head, I'm like, I know, I'm going to take this guy down. And then his friend comes and tackles me and swearing at me. And what if I swear? What am I going to do? What if the cop, what am I going to do? Like, it all plays out, and sin can be there. So I'm just saying, So,
man, it's good.
how many minutes did we go today?
1:13.
Okay, wow.
Yeah. See, a good conversation is like an hour long.
Well, I'm speaking a lot. This is kind of like 3 episodes in one. Yeah.
Well, man, I appreciate you sharing about fatherhood, because I know all of it, fatherhood's a level playing field. So it doesn't matter what I do, what you do. At the end of the day, you and I are navigating this fatherhood thing, and you've made some amazing decisions to be a man who's engaged with your family, right? To be early 20s and to go, there's something here. I want to fight for this woman. Yeah. There's something here. I want to fight for my kid. I'm not going to leave this house. I'm going to fight for this. Mm-hmm. I'm going to rebel again and again and again. I'm going to keep going after it. Yeah. And so to be able to hear that from a man and to be able to share that with others is huge, because, man, our world is hungry. And my belief at the core, I believe, and I'm a Christian, okay, but I believe that if men knew who they were as fathers, the world would look different.
Of course it would.
And if we understood, I mean, even how you talk about my role with my son and my daughter and my wife's role, if we started to embrace that stuff and not just think of ourselves all the time. Now, it's true, man, at the back, at the core, the center of this is a way that I believe we were brought into this world. We were designed. We are in the image of God.
Yep.
Fatherhood is a thing, the way that I'm talking about this. And so, man, you're an intentional dad. You fought for your family. You continue to fight for your family. You continue to be intentional with how you spend your time with your kids, with people, with community. And so, I mean, writing this book, Never Fails Marriage, and preaching the gospel and loving your family, man, it is incredible. And I appreciate you sharing with all of us.
And I even just want to say, maybe it's more the Lord, guys. There's things that I've said or done or we fought about or my kids have gotten crazy about with each other that I wouldn't want to share. It's not like I'm like, hey, I'm just this guy.
I'm not hearing that at all.
I'm not the Sunday guy who's like, because I'm in the Word, 3 days that week before I preach. The church I go to, those pastors are open. They're vulnerable. Their goal is to live above reproach. But I'm saying, guys, you're going to say stupid stuff. You're going to respond in ways you wish you didn't. Women love to be quiet, and it builds up for 3 months, and they go say something stupid or do something stupid, and it's crazy. But get in the Word, get in those books that help, get these things like podcasts out. Go share stuff like this if this has blessed you. People, listen, I'm getting posts today about a pastor who's like reaching out to my friend who's overseeing big churches, and he's like suicidal and struggling, and he's thinking of ways to take his life, and it's like, man, but his kids keep saying little things. These people, like they've said that a man will walk across a bridge and fight with his wife or have someone say something to lose his job or doubt. And if he jumped off the bridge on the way down, he's like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Life's crazy, but guys, we don't have it all together. God does. It's not that we're perfect. We are in Him. We're being perfected. Guys, there's hope. Get into the Word. Get to know Him. Guys, reach out to any of us, either of us, to just help for prayer, for whatever it may be. So awesome.
That's good. Brian, thank you so much, man, for opening up your home and letting me be here.
Appreciate it. Awesome, you guys. God bless. Thank you guys for sticking around. I hope that encouraged you. As I was listening through this, when my brother put it up on his podcast, I was laughing at just how far we've come, the journey, what it felt like, the emotions wrestling through. For dads, even for mums, for children that listened in, God bless you guys. Press in and lean not on your own understanding, but on the Lord, His will, His ways, His word, the Spirit's leading. This is Brian Sumner saying over and out. And remember, this is the Foolishness podcast, because the message of the cross is foolishness to those that are perishing. But to us who are being saved, it's the power of God. Go over to briansumner.net for more on me, travel, calendar, out there speaking, and even consider becoming a partner to keep these resources and the ministry I'm doing reaching out. briansumner.net/support for more. God bless you. Amen.
This has been brought to you by the One Story Podcast.
Tonight,